Okay, so today we're going to be learning about properties of functions. We're going to be learning about symmetry. So the basics of symmetry, there are even functions, and the even functions are symmetrical with respect to the y-axis, which means if there's a point here, there's also going to be a point here, because it's reflecting over the y-axis. And even functions have the equation of f of x equals f of negative x. And odd functions are symmetrical with respect to the origin. And the origin is a 0, 0 point, which means if there's a point here, there's also going to be a point here. Just like the tan function. And the odd function's equation is f of negative x equals negative f of x. So remembering that the even functions, you can use this equation to check for them. And for odd functions, you can use that equation to check for them. And even functions are always symmetrical with respect to the y-axis, and odd functions are always symmetrical with respect to the origin. We're going to do a few problems. So our first problem, number 1, is f of x equals 3x plus 4. So first we're going to check if it's even, and once again even is f of x equals f of negative x. Since we already have our f of x, we just need to find f of negative x, and that just means to make your x negative. So 3 negative x plus 4. And negative times a positive is going to end up with negative 3x plus 4. Now this is a negative and that's a positive, so this is not true. These two do not equal. So let's check if it's odd. So odd is f of negative x equals negative f of x. So, since we already have f of negative x, which is this, we just need to find negative f of x, which just means that you just put a negative in front of the whole function. So, negative 3x plus 4. Now you're going to distribute the negative, and that's going to end up with negative 3x minus 4. And this is not equal to this, so therefore it's not odd either. So this function is not symmetrical at all. Okay, moving on to our second problem. For problem number 2, it is f of x equals 2x to the third. So first we're going to check if it's even. So even is f of x equals f of negative x. And then, so now we have to just find f of negative x, which just means to make your x negative. So 2 negative x to the third. And a negative times a negative is a positive, but since it's to the third, you're going to times a negative times a positive, which is going to end up with negative 2x to the third again. This is a negative and that's a positive, so therefore that is not even. So let's check for if it's odd. Odd is f of negative x equals negative f of x. So all we have to find is negative f of x, since this is our f of negative x. So negative f of x just means to put negative in front of the whole function. So negative 2x to the third, just like that. And that, once again, is going to end up to be negative 2x to the third. So this and this match. So therefore, the function is definitely odd, since this is true. Last problem. Our third problem is f of x equals 3 over 1 plus x squared. So, once again, let's check if it's even first. So f of x equals f of negative x. Let's make our x negative and see if it comes out equal. Plus negative x squared. Negative times a negative is a positive, so therefore f of negative x equals the original function. So this is true, and this function is even. But we can always check if it's odd and why it isn't odd. So f of negative x equals negative f of x. So all we have to find is negative f of x. So we put a negative in front of the whole thing, and we're going to distribute it either to the top or the bottom. So I'm going to choose the bottom. So this is going to end up equaling 3 over 1 minus x squared. And this does not equal that. So therefore it's not odd, and this function is definitely even. Thank you for watching, and hopefully you learned something.